Hello and welcome to the Imaging Wire Show. My name is Brian Casey and I'm managing editor of the Imaging Wire. We've got a great episode for you today. Our topic is the journey to cloud-based PACS, and we're going to be talking about a recently released white paper from Signify Research that analyzes how US-based healthcare providers view cloud-based PACS. All of the providers included in the white paper have transitioned from on-premises PACS to public cloud deployment of their complete radiology IT PACS solution. And we're happy to feature them on the Imaging Wire show today. Our guests include Amy Thompson. She's research manager at Signify Research of the UK. Jay Kikut, MD, Vice Chair of Radiology Informatics at the University of Vermont Medical Center. Reed Smoller, Director of Information Technology at Bay Medical Management in Walnut Creek, California. And Keyvan Nouri, MD, a diagnostic radiologist at Bay Imaging Consultants, also in Walnut Creek, California. Everyone, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So let's have everybody go around and tell us a little bit about yourself. Amy, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course. So as you mentioned, I'm a research manager at Signify Research, and I lead our healthcare IT portfolio. So I'm an analyst within the imaging IT portfolio alongside AI and medical imaging and teleradiology.
All right, very good. Dr. Kikut?
I'm a vice chair of radiology informatics and the University of Vermont Health Network. It's a conglomerate of several institutions, with the hub being the academic practice. I've been in this position for 7 years now.
Okay, very good. Reed, how about you?
I'm Reed Smoller. I'm Director of IT at Bay Medical Management, which is the management organization for Bay Imaging Consultants, a large radiology group in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've been in this role for about 20 years now.
Very good. And Dr. Nouri, how about you?
Hi, Keyvan Nouri here. I've been a radiologist in the Bay Area for 25 years, worked with Reed for 20 of them. A lot of leadership seats in radiology management, as well as deployment, cloud-based products, deployments, so on, and all the advancements that we've seen in our field in the past 4 or 5 years.
Sounds great. All right, so let's jump right in. So radiology was the first medical specialty to go digital, and it converted from medical images on hard copy film to digital data with PACS, a couple decades ago. But the model for that digital conversion has been to store the images locally on premises in hospitals, and that worked fine for the first few decades of PACS. But now we're starting to see radiology look more closely at cloud-based medical image management. So, Amy, you followed the whole cloud-based image management issue at Signify for the last few years. Can you tell us a bit about cloud technology and the impetus for the white paper that Signify is putting out?
Yeah, of course. So primarily when you look at, especially the radiology IT market post-pandemic, there has been this resurgence in cloud technology. Private cloud's not a new concept. It's been about for a couple of decades, but really that importance and evaluation around public cloud, especially with the need post-pandemic or during the pandemic to help accommodate the need for radiologists to leave the hospital and kind of for the safety work remotely. That coupled with the ever-changing dynamic within healthcare where providers are increasingly managing this disparate network, there's this real clear emphasis on the role in cloud. And interest is growing, especially in a market like the US, but converting in terms of, from a vendor side, converting that interest into deals has been quite slow in terms of the first adopters have moved, but that mainstream adoption is yet to be achieved. And where this kind of concept of this white paper comes from is the ability to leverage the insights and the experiences from those that have already moved to the cloud to share those experiences with the others and kind of act as a more market education piece, understand kind of what the drivers, maybe even concerns around moving to the cloud prior to that engagement, what were the key takeaways and what did they learn from the experience and what can be shared with others to help them as them themselves evaluate what they should be doing with regards to cloud.
Sounds great. Now, why do you think healthcare has been a little bit slower to move to the cloud than some other industries?
I think when you look at healthcare, it's quite a unique sector in the fact that it will inherently be quite protective over its patient care and patient data. And fundamentally, that fundamental transition kind of from moving from to the cloud will take time for a number of reasons. You have, for example, the need of or the current infrastructure already in place at hospitals. Number of providers will recently have undergone millions worth of investment within their own data centers. So that will instantly kind of stall the ability to upgrade. You've got vendors both on the imaging informatics side as well as the cloud vendors themselves needing to build trust within the market. As I said, patient data, that's a lot of trust that you're putting in a cloud vendor to store that for you and protect that. So that takes time to build, as well as the technical kind of advancements and investment required from both parties in terms of the informatics vendors and the cloud, optimizing services on the portfolio to allow cloud and solutions whilst in the cloud to perform to the same level at which they do on premise, whilst maintaining security and so forth. There's a few other smaller bits, contract cycles, for example, the broader IT strategy around cloud will all play a role, and fundamentally just make it more of a gradual transition within the market as opposed to a big bang, everyone moves to the cloud within a year.
Now, let's talk to each one of our panelists about what the environment was like, their IT environment was like before they moved to the cloud, and what some of the pressures that they were facing, in terms of staffing and hardware budgeting and things like that. Dr. Kikut, can you talk a little bit to us about how things were going at the University of Vermont and maybe some of the challenges that you were facing there?
Well, we went live with Visage, which is our cloud solution. We had 12 disparate PACS systems. So needless, that is quite an arduous effort for IT to maintain and upkeep. We were several versions behind in upgrades on many of those solutions. Some were end of line solutions. So there were many. This was just one impetus to move into a single solution. So we made kind of a big jump from disparate end-of-life systems into a cloud-based solution. And so for us, part of this, as Amy has perhaps implicitly said, that there's not a lot of margin in healthcare to invest into new technology. So, if you made a significant investment into upgrading a PACS system, a year ago, you are not going to be looking into making another jump this year or next year. So we were in a position where we needed to make a jump anyway, but it was a kind of a multi-aim approach, one of to eliminate the disparate systems, reduce IT resource requirement, at the same time improve radiologist efficiency and delivery of care from, kind of moving images around from one place to another. And on top of it, another impetus, and I'm not sure if you heard, but the UVM Health Network was a victim of a cyber attack. So we had another huge impetus on the cybersecurity standpoint. So it's kind of this made sense for us from this multi-aim approach to move to single cloud-based solution.
That makes sense. So Reed, can you talk a little bit about, as a director of IT there at Bay Medical, can you talk about some of the challenges that you were facing? I mean, I'm sure that probably staffing was a big issue. What were some of the other things?
Yeah, well, for us, big issues at the time we were doing it, staffing was certainly one. Just finding qualified people was difficult enough. We knew we needed to move from our old PACS system. It wasn't meeting our needs anymore. And we really we're hoping to avoid doing buy a whole new storage area network, servers, all the infrastructure pieces, because we knew that was going to take a long time. And as often happens in the radiology group side, you're trying to move quickly with a lot of these things. And so we had come pretty quickly to the decision that we like the Visage product. Our radiologists use it with some of the hospitals that we work with. And so then once we had decided on that, it was determining whether we wanted to do the on-premises or the cloud-based. And it just, from the financial numbers, reduced capital expenditure, we could focus on, it was just really operating expense at that point. It had flexibility. We've been in kind of a constant state of growth over the last 10 years, adding new hospitals. So, we're maybe a little different than a traditional hospital-based environment where, hey, we get a new contract with a hospital and it winds up being, okay, we need you in place in 90 days, which makes it very hard if we're in a traditional mode where we've got to add new servers or anything. That makes it very tight. And so we knew we wanted something that would allow us a great degree of flexibility. And then the other thing that we were really looking at, was kind of alluded to earlier, is the move of our radiologists out of the hospitals. We wanted, with that move, we're like, oh, we don't really need to make more investment in the data center. We need to work on how to best connect our radiologists to what they need. And I was just going to say, and the cloud seemed to kind of be that good fit for us.
Right. Dr. Nouri, was that kind of your perspective as well, that a lot of the issues that Reed was mentioning were things that you were facing there?
Yeah, so we started working with Visage, as I said, over 10 years ago, where there wasn't cloud-based deployment. And so there was a unifying, and I heard from the doctor from Vermont, there was 14 different instances of PACS that were at play in Sutter Health. And so one was the unifying factor. And we did see the length of time and deployment, the numbers, as Reed was mentioning, dollar numbers, time spent, FTEs, when the deployment was not in the cloud. And it was not possible to do this in this 2 to 3 months time space that's required for it, and just the on-site work that's needed. And so the real evolution, the real sort of 3.0 evolution for us was to witness not just the product that we're familiar with and are facile in using, but just how quickly we can take various healthcares and unite them and deploy in a very short time frame, which simply would not have been possible in the previous environment, just in terms of time. So that was something that went with Reed's great team really fairly effortlessly, that we were able to accomplish something that simply could not have happened 5 years ago. So a tremendous movement forward. Yeah.
Now, Amy, in the course of writing the white paper, what were some of the things, the disadvantages of the on-prem model that you discovered, and how the cloud potentially solves that, and does that kind of match up with the experiences that we're hearing from our panelists here?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the biggest benefits that cloud architecture offers for radiology IT compared to, say, an on-premise deployment is really around the scalability. So really emphasizing the points that Reed and others have made around, when you start looking, as I mentioned earlier, around this kind of disparate network, even around, you have instances where you've got acquisitions or consolidation within the provider network, but even beyond that, just more formal partnerships between imaging hospitals and imaging centers, or even teleradiology providers as well. You're really going now beyond the four walls of a hospital, and therefore the technology needs to meet that need. So really it's the ability to take advantage of that agility of the architecture, the scalability. But it's also like with that comes the ability to simultaneously roll out updates to the system without limited or no downtime. If a new kind of integration partner comes in within the software, or new AI is developed, again, that's simultaneously rolled out through the benefits of cloud and the architecture that it offers, as opposed to having to go manually on site to the data center and update site by site if you're looking at the on-premise comparison.
Gotcha. So let's shift from what life was like before you put in the cloud-based PACS, and let's talk about now that you've had it. Please let us know what solution you're using, how long you've had it, and what were your experiences with the implementation? Did that go as you expected? And how your life is different now that you've got cloud-based PACS. Dr. Kikut, can you start us off?
Yes. We've been live with Visage since February this year. We haven't experienced single downtime. I think that's kind of on everybody's mind of going to cloud services is what the latency is going to be like. And that has not turned out to be a concern at all. I don't really see, in fact, I don't see any difference between on-prem PACS solutions that we have in terms of loading the images. In fact, I would say it probably is slicker than it used to be. The hanging protocols are very flexible, and it's easy to switch between one and the other. There's really no dropping of images in the image ports. One thing about the ramp to the cloud, I think that's I want to say it's even at the load bandwidth for people for radiologists who work from home, you really don't see a difference whether you're at home or work from on-site. There is no difference in terms of latency. Another part I think that's important to mention that we chose to have a redundant cloud ramp. So we have two independent vendors that we use for the database connections, data center connections, and those are broadband, but if one goes down, it switches to the other. In terms of cloud stability, that's not an issue at all. I think that this, that we understand that in terms of the cloud servers and scalability and backup, this has not failed. So if anything that failed us was one of the ISP connection went down and the switch moved to another, but we did not have a downtime since we went live.
Wow, that's amazing. Reed, have you had a similar experience there? I mean, and maybe talk about, like we said earlier, the impact on staffing and how that's changed a little bit.
Our experience has been very similar. We went live just a little over a year ago, and we have not had a single downtime yet on Visage. So we've been very happy about it. And kind of echoing the theme of not needing, we don't have regular downtimes anymore. So we're not having to do the latest patching and bring the system down for a couple hours a month, like most of our hospital partners are that are in traditional PACS systems. So it's a huge advantage for us because we're reading for multiple sites on our system after, late into the night when most of them are having their downtimes. And so it's so critical for us to not have those downtimes. And so it's been fantastic for that. With the cutover, we haven't needed to add any staffing. The team that we already had in place has been able to transition on the kind of clinical application side to Visage. And then we've actually now are freeing up time as we're just finalizing the retirement of our old system. So we're freeing up kind of time and resources in our data center and our virtual environment as we're bringing those old systems down. So actually, reducing the amount of time our team has to use in terms of just normal maintenance and upkeep.
Great. Dr. Nouri, how has life after the cloud been for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'd really compare it to going from an analog to a digital system. The uptime has been great. The streaming of the Visage itself, the way that images come across and the reason we're able to see them so quickly compared to other PACS systems that we use is the streaming capacity. So the upload is extremely quick. There is no difference, as you mentioned, when you compare it with an in-house and out-of-house. And as Reed said, we actually provide services when the hospital system is down and ours is up. So it's essential. As you know, we're within minutes, we're stroke center, trauma center coverage, and we need to be able to stay up. And to be able to do so efficiently and consistently has been absolutely imperative. And again, in ways that have really transformed our practice and adds a lot of value on all sides to our hospital partners.
Dr. Nouri, do you see efficiency gains on the part of the radiologists from cloud-based PACS, or is it just kind of a wash?
Well, I mean, that part of it is relatively stable. I mean, if the efficiency gains come from us being able to marry various health systems together and to be able to have one radiologist on multiple systems, essentially, but all being captured in the Visage through that. So that's where the efficiency comes up. The efficiency obviously also comes from being able to do so seamlessly without interruptions, which, as you know, 2 minutes in radiology time is equal to 2.5 hours in any other clinical practice. So for us, the efficiency has been the reliability and the increase, as what we call our RVUs, because we're able to consolidate work in our practice in ways that we could not do before, and really bring in smaller sites and bigger sites and subspecialty reads, which is clearly the way radiology is going. And we offer 24/7 interpretation, final interpretation, in ways that were not available before, dispersed through various areas of the United States. So that's really where the efficiency comes, which is very significant, of course.
Dr. Kikut, you at Vermont, you had, as you mentioned, you had 12 disparate PACS systems, and now you've got one unified system across all your sites. Are you seeing efficiency gains there as well?
Yes, we do, and it's similarly what Nouri was saying. It's the biggest efficiency is in places where we're utilizing two separate PACS systems. So, for example, mammography PACS system and the traditional PACS system for comparing to MR to ultrasounds. Now it is single display. In terms of kind of the rest of the diagnostic radiology, in just general CT and MRI, the efficiency is perhaps a little smaller. It helps with the hanging protocols and kind of flipping from one comparison to the next comparison sequences. That is pretty slick, and we have several different vendors for our MRI solutions, and all series kind of drop automatically where they should be. That it's not more kind of what we used to do with the disparate old PACS systems when you had to drop and carry images over and change layouts. So there is some efficiency also in diagnostic radiology. And then in places where we were using additional display tools, advanced visualization tools, maybe ultrasound or nukes, that is now also on a single viewer. So that's an addition kind of that swivel chair technology, if you will, that all drifted away. So there is efficiency kind of all layers. And I think at the end, it does add up to efficiency on the radiology end users end.
Let's talk a little bit about cybersecurity. Amy, when you were doing the interviews for the white paper, did the issue of cybersecurity come up? And because it seems like in the past, hospitals were really concerned about taking their data off premises and putting it in a cloud somewhere. Is that concern starting to go away? And I'm assuming that the cloud implementations are more secure than on-prem?
Yes, definitely. It came up in every conversation, and even through vendors, through our market research, it's one of the main drivers. It's almost now where previously security may have been a kind of slowdown and concern of, can a cloud vendor secure my data? It's now almost turning pivotally on the other side of, they're probably the best people. When you look at the annual investment any cloud vendor makes on cybersecurity, no hospital can match it, just due to the other, factors that a hospital needs to budget for and spend on. There still remains initial concerns in the market, but when you start looking at the overall risk, it starts to become a no-brainer in terms of the benefits that cloud can offer. And with increasing cyber risks in the US and globally, hospitals are really doing what they can to outsource that management, which is where also a managed SaaS service can come quite handy and quite preferred by providers as they transition to the cloud.
Dr. Kikut, do you feel like your data network is more secure now with the cloud than it was previously on-prem?
We significantly beefed up our security team over the last 2 years. And it was a general agreement that this was one of our aims, was that switch over into a single solution is to have increased security. And that's where the cloud actually came up. So, leave alone that we really don't want to be in the business of maintaining data centers. Everything that we can move as a managed service, SaaS, or any other services that we can move on into somebody else's or vendor's hands. I think that's the paradigm that we're going to see, not outside of just image domain, but pretty much everywhere in healthcare and in business. So slowly, I think that's kind of moving it into those solutions to cloud as a service. It's not new and outside of medicine, but it's going to become part of what we do in medicine now.
Makes a lot of sense. Reed, as an IT manager, does it make your job a little bit easier to not have to worry quite so much about the data management side or about the security side? And maybe you don't have to have a black belt in data security to you can give it to somebody like AWS to deal with?
Absolutely. I still worry about it, but it's a different worry. I mean, it's more, hey, you go in, make sure you're comfortable with everything up front, but the resources on the cloud end are so much greater than ours, especially as a radiology group. We don't have a huge staff, and so being able to take this key patient data off of our network, direct network, and have somebody else that is responsible for making sure it's secure and has all the protections in place, some of which are incredibly expensive. I mean, we've done a lot on our own, but just having it off of our network makes things significantly simpler for us, and less of a headache. Just the monitoring alone of it to make sure the data wasn't touched is a huge relief not to have to do internally.
That's great. So our time's drawing to a close. I'd like to have each one of our panelists maybe provide a little bit of advice. And Dr. Nouri, maybe if you could go first, provide a little bit of advice to our viewers who maybe haven't gone to cloud-based PACS for how to go about doing it, maybe some things to look out for. Dr. Nouri, any kind of advice for our viewers?
Sure. Yeah, I think as Dr. Kikut said, this has happened outside of medicine. It's due time for it to happen in medicine. There really is no other solution. This is the way to go in terms of security, in terms of deployment, in terms of efficiency, and in terms of the overall management of it in a bigger enterprise, certainly for smaller groups as well as larger groups. So I think it's just a matter of time and adapting it and seeing that it's a secure, fast, reliable system, and really the way to go in the future.
Very good. Dr. Kikut, any advice for our viewers out there?
Do your homework before you switch to cloud. Identify which vendor works for you. That includes not just for the cloud solution, but also for networking and access to the data center. And make sure you have all the stakeholders in place. So all the IT resources, all the cybersecurity resources, that all the radiologists should have a buy-in of moving into that single solution, and that it all makes business sense. Because at the end, it's got to make business sense. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
Yep, for sure. Reed, how about you?
Yeah, I would really echo. The important thing is making sure you're working with the right vendors when you do this. You need to, if you're looking at a PACS solution, you want to make sure that the PACS vendor you're working with has a system that works well in the cloud. Not all of them do. So for us with Visage, that was one of the key drivers, was just the architecture of the system is inherently it just works with the cloud because of the render servers being on their end, rather than so much data being passed back and forth between the client and the server. And so it's just making sure you understand what the architecture is, and then it does work well in a cloud environment.
Great advice. Amy, any parting words? The white paper, and maybe if you can also let us know how folks can get a copy of the white paper when it becomes available.
Yeah, so I think final words from me is kind of echoing the sentiment. Although there are great examples on the transition to the cloud, and there are amazing benefits that providers are seeing, I think the importance for anyone considering is that it is an individual journey for that institution. It's very circumstantial and contextual to their situation, their workforce, their IT infrastructure. So it is also making that internal decision on what's best for your clinicians, your IT staff, and from a business sense, as Dr. Kikut put it. In terms of the white paper, it can be downloaded from the Signify Research website within our news and events section of the website.
Perfect. Very good. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for being with us. Amy Thompson of Signify Research, Dr. Jay Kikut of the University of Vermont, Reed Smoller of Bay Medical Management, and Dr. Keyvan Nouri of Bay Imaging Consultants. Thanks, everyone, for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, signing off for the Imaging Wire. My name is Brian Casey.